Hello and salutations, my fellow philosophers. Welcome back to the Philos-Hippie Podcast, in which we explore the intersection of philosophy and spirituality so that we can live more holistic and meaningful secular lives. Now, as of writing this video, the season of Lent begins tomorrow on February 18th, and this year I just kind of want to explore some of the themes of Lent because, now Alex, why are you talking about Lent? You're not religious anymore. Why bother masochistically depriving yourself of the joys and pleasures the world has to offer? And dear listener, you are actually correct. I'm not religious anymore, but I'm still spiritual and philosophical. Or in other words, spiritual but not religious. Check out the very first episode of the podcast to learn the difference between those two concepts because I have a slightly different interpretation of what people typically think of with that. But despite not being religious anymore, in recent years, I've grown to realize the benefits that religion can still bring. And one of the benefits that religion still brings today, in this instance Catholicism and Christianity, is that Lent can be a powerful mechanism and force for a profound change and appreciation in life in general. And in fact, participating in Lent while being spiritual and philosophical might actually open the doorway for deeper, richer experiences than religious people, because you deliberately choose to engage in Lent rather than inheriting a tradition and doing so out of moral obligation. And so, with all that being said, let's explore the spiritual but not religious value of Lent today. Now, to start off, let's just dive into a quick history of what Lent is actually. Lent always starts 40 days before Easter on the Christian calendar in order to help invoke a deeper time of reflection, fasting, and prayer, all in preparation for Easter. And all this preparation is meant to help one gain closer connection with God. In medieval Europe, Christians abstained from things like meats and festive celebrations the entire season of Lent, all 40 days, so that they can enter into a time of contemplative simplicity. Nowadays, our sacrifices for Lent may seem trivial in comparison, as people give up things like chocolate or Netflix in our modern age. But there's no shame in that inherently. It's just a fact that Lent has shifted from sacrificing dietary temptations towards more, psychological targets like trying to give up social media and going on a dopamine fast, for example. And while typically only Christians and Catholics engage in Lent today, I don't think it's strictly reserved from them alone. You see, when you strip away the theology surrounding Lent, the structure of it that remains is powerful. Because at its core, Lent is a time in which you engage in voluntary spiritual discomfort so that you can reorient and remind yourself of what truly matters. You see, Lent does not have to be a season filled with devotion to God or a sky daddy in the heavens. Instead, people who are spiritual and philosophical can still view Lent as a kind of psychological training, or Lent can provide a kind of existential reset in his or her life. Because Lent is not a belief system, but rather a ritual framework that helps to restructure the inner life. So, what are some practical ways in which spiritual and philosophical people can repurpose and refashion Lent to serve their own purposes in their lives? Just like anyone doing Lent, it's first good to figure out what the purpose behind wanting to do Lent is actually. And since we're doing Lent not because God tells us to and God commands us, we need to be a bit more creative behind our intentions. You see, we are not doing this out of strict obedience, but out of a yearning for something deeper. And for each person, this may look different on the face of it. One person may give up social media or porn or drugs, not out of an obligation to God, but because it will serve the aim of cultivating a disciplined, more harmonious mind, giving one greater power and freedom over their internal states. Letting go can become a practice of inner freedom that is not burdened by tradition. Another person may try to make a concerted and focused effort to be more mindful of their anger or anxiety and try to gain a better balance with them. Or you may be the person to not really devote yourself to God, but towards a creative or service project instead that you're passionate about, and reserving more of your time, more of your energy towards pursuing those ambitions and goals. You see, Lent does not have to be all about sacrificing your vices. It doesn't have to be solely restrictive, but it can be additive too, in giving you the ritual framework to enrich your life in whatever way rings true for your soul. What truly matters when setting up your attention for Lent is to give yourself permission to experiment, to get creative with what you want out of life. Now, I just want to give my own personal example to further illustrate and to help inspire those of you who are spiritual and philosophical, but are still a little confused as to where to start practically. So for me, this year on the season of Lent, I'll be doing a couple of things actually. During this time period, I'm going to be giving up my favorite vice, weed. Weed has honestly helped giving me guidance on my spiritual journey throughout much of it. It has illuminated to me many insights into the nature of my mind by widening my consciousness. It's helped me deepen my meditation practice. And also, it's just generally made me a more compassionate and down-to-earth person, not plagued by severe anxiety every day. But I have reached a point in my life where the cost of weed are beginning to outweigh the benefits. Because I feel like I have extracted all the good I could out of weed. It used to be a tool for spiritual growth, but nowadays it feels like my spiritual benefits from it have relatively plateaued. Now, I have nothing against weed, and it's different for everyone, but I feel that for me, it just saps me in my ambition, creativity, and overall potential. So that's exactly why I will be giving up for Lent this season, to help me reconnect with my inner spirit. However, empty space needs structure, or old habits will immediately creep back in. That is why it's crucial that if you end up giving anything for Lent, that for everything you remove, try to add something intentional to fill its space. This turns Lent into a cultivation rather than self-punishment and forced abstention. And so, to help fill the void, I will be adding to my life during this period a time marked by adventurous travel and also putting more time and effort into this podcast as well. Because adding something purposeful and meaningful to your life during Lent reshapes it from a time of self-denial to self-formation. And this is where Lent becomes truly philosophical rather than religious. Because when you voluntarily give something up, you're forced to confront an unsettling truth. How much of your life runs on automatic impulse? We like to believe we are free, rational, conscious agents making sound decisions. But if you give up something for 40 days, you begin to see how pervasive your desires really are. Or if you're adding something new and expansive to your life at Lent, you begin to see how difficult it is to produce lasting change and shine a light on your habits. And this helps give you profound self-knowledge. And if that isn't philosophical, then I don't know what is. Because philosophy at its core is the examination of life. Socrates' most famous line is that the unexamined life is not worth living after all. Lent is one of the most tried and true methods for self-examination. And this is why for those of us who are spiritual and philosophical, it is prudent of us to not throw the baby out with the bathwater when distancing yourself from the shackles of religion. And so, perhaps the invitation of Lent this year, at least for those of us who are spiritual and philosophical, is not about returning to the dogma of religion, but reclaiming the depths it still has to offer. Because it's easy when leaving religion to feel as though we must abandon everything associated with it. And in many ways, separation is in fact necessary sometimes. However, not every ritual is a chain. Some are still tools. Lent, when approached freely, becomes less about obedience and more about attention. It's a season that asks us to slow down long enough to notice what moves us, what tempts us, what distracts us, and what sustains us. It gives us a structured pause in the middle of ordinary life that allows the time and space necessary to step into a new rhythm of life. This year, as I step away from weed for 40 days, I'm not doing so because it's sinful or forbidden or illegal in some areas. I'm doing it because I want to see more clearly. I want to know who I am without that familiar haze. I want to observe what surfaces in its absence, and to redirect that restless energy into my travels and into this creative project on the podcast. So, if you choose to participate in Lent this year, you don't need to do so out of fear or obligation. You can enter into it with curiosity, as an experiment, as a quiet exploration and reclamation of your own inner freedom. And in a world that rarely encourages self-examination, choosing even a short season of deliberate living may be one of the most philosophical acts you can make. 40 days is not a lifetime, but It is long enough to learn something real about yourself. Long enough to discover that freedom is not found in indulging every desire, but in realizing that you are not owned by them. And if that realization lingers even just a little bit after Lent, then the experiment was a success and has done its work. Now, thank you once again for listening to the Philos-Hippie Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and that you found it enlightening. And if you like this kind of content, make sure to come back every Friday on the channel for more. And until next time, I wish you all boundless wisdom and metta. Peace.